Hey guys, this is Mel, and I'm back to talk about Legacies, episodes 412, titled Not All Those Who Wander Are Lost, which premiered Thursday, March 10th, 2022 on the CW. I am recording roughly an hour and a half after the episode has aired, so huge spoiler alert. If you haven't seen the episode already, please go do so first, and then come back and see what I have to say about the episode. My other video reminders are up on screen, so take a moment to remind yourselves of those. Also, I am recording this after only watching the episode once, and maybe a scene twice based off of what was available on YouTube, because I really needed to rehear something before I added it into the video. But yeah, and otherwise, just a quick YouTube shout out to Maria Lira and Golden Angel 15 for answering a lot of the questions I had in my 411 video. I truly appreciate it. I also just thank you so much for clarifying some things, as well as thank you to anybody who also just watched my 411 video just to hear what I had to say. I truly appreciate that you took the time to listen to my thoughts, so thank you so much. And if you're here again, welcome back. So thank you. But let's get right into it. So like, what happened in this episode? A lot did happen in regards to like kind of like a data dump. But the episode quote of "Not all those who wander are lost," it was said by Landon, but he was reading the quote off of his own tombstone when he found his way back to the real world temporarily. We'll talk about that later. Timeline-wise, it's actually two things. For Alaric, Landon, and Ted stuck in limbo, this episode continues from the last time we saw them in episode 410. For everybody in the real world, this episode takes place shortly after the events of 411, mainly in regard to like Hope and Lizzie and Aurora and such. So there's that. Also shortly after 411, because the scene opens up with Aurora still on the high of Cleo's muse inspiration, and by the time we meet up with her, she had just used up the last of it, and she was researching like crazy. So there's that. Episode reminder: I'd say maybe changing teams is how I'm probably gonna best summarize what happened in this episode. But featured creature, there wasn't any new creature like the Pokwoji last episode or a few episodes ago, but we do see the return of a djinn or a genie by the name of Zeed, and unfortunately we get the return of the necromancer. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Storylines though, there's actually only two specific storylines. We have the first storyline, which takes place in the real world, which I'm calling What Do You Know? And the second storyline takes place mainly in limbo, but again, they do spend some brief time in the real world, but I'm calling it 3 Tricky Wishes. So let's start with the first storyline of What Do You Know? And this pretty much focuses on Hope, Lizzie, and Aurora. So we have Hope. Well, they manage to capture Aurora, and the first thing they do is Hope tortures Aurora to find out information about the gods, which fails. Aurora does not talk at all. Second attempt was Lizzie wanting to do a head dive in Aurora, but instead, after all the torturing and kind of being out of it from all the pain, Aurora mistakes Lizzie as her brother Tristan and ends up like sharing who she believes is her beloved brother, her plan of how to stop the tribrid by and all the research she came about with the gods. So what we find out is that their sarcophagus that was meant to hold the gods was actually built to protect the gods from something. Don't know what it is just yet. But when Aurora found the sarcophagus and stole it from a museum, it was empty. So Aurora thinks that there is a god still walking around on Earth who that sarcophagus belonged to. She thinks it's Vulcan or Hephaestus, the blacksmiths of the gods. From my understanding, they are the ones who created the sarcophagus or sarcophagi to protect the gods. And all she knows is that it's a girl. Lizzie thinks it's the who she calls Stoner Jen, and the one who originally destroyed the sarcophagus when she went up against Hope and Lizzie. So there's that. It's not clear whether or not Vulcan or Hephaestus, it's the same person. It's just two different names from either Greek or Roman mythology. We don't know if in the Legacies universe, if they're meant to be demigods or if they're meant to be like just like the regular gods. We'll talk about that later, but that's what we get from Aurora. While this is all happening, Hope is trying to create her own plan by creating her own version of a Papatunde weapon, a dark magic weapon in the form of a bell, and she's doing it with help from a stolen dark magic grimoire that she took from Vardamus, which has the spell that created the Papatunde knife in the grimoire. So, anyways, things happen. Hope tries to use the Sire Bond to get Lizzie to kill Aurora, but instead Lizzie fights back, and she claims that she broke the Sire Bond by not actually staking Aurora in the heart like Hope commanded her to do. But eventually that leads to Lizzie apologizing to Aurora about treating her in a way that reminded Lizzie of how people used to treat her when she had her episodes. So they seem to be in an understanding, which leads to Lizzie and Aurora now wanting to find the god that could warp reality and alter time, in hopes that they could take him back for Aurora to a time when Tristan was still alive, and for Lizzie to a time where Josie's still with her, she wasn't a heretic, and when Hope still had her humanity back. Also, during this conversation, we get the reminder that Tristan died when Elijah was killed by the Hollow, because Tristan was a part of Elijah's sire line, which we all knew, but it was great to have that reminder in case, like, if you didn't know what had happened in the originals. So there's that. With the second storyline dealing with Limbo and the 3 tricky spells, so we got Zed conducting a contract that says that for each of the 3 souls, in exchange, he wants their 3 wishes. In exchange, he wants their 3 souls. So Landon's first wish ends up getting him and Ted resurrected and back in the real world, but Landon is still stuck in limbo and they don't know why. So when Landon goes back to the school and kind of approaches Wade to get an update, kind of posing as if like Wade is in a dream and talking to Landon, he finds out that Alaric is actually in a coma. He's not actually dead, and that's why Spirit Alaric did not come back with them with the wish. Unfortunately, the ferryman catches up to Ted and Landon, kills them again, so now they're back in limbo. Second wish belongs to Alaric. His wish was to make Ted the necromancer again, because the necromancer apparently has more power over the ferryman. So, unfortunately, that means their connection to Ted is severed through the necromancer. So the necromancer wants to punish the both of them, and by doing so, he keeps Landon in limbo, and he sends Alaric back to the land of the living as the perfect punishment because it's unfair, but also because he feels like Alaric will suffer, based on Landon's planning, Alaric would suffer more by seeing his students suffer and seeing this, now knowing that Hope is the tribrid and the villain to his students, that Josie has left the school and that Lizzie is now a heretic. But before Alaric is sent away, Landon just asks for Alaric to do better, to do things differently, to get the students involved with solving the problem instead of trying to do everything behind their backs and take the burden on for himself. So Alaric wakes up in the hospital, and it seems like he's taking Landon's advice, because he wakes up to Wade and asks that he has a lot to explain or to tell everybody, but he wants to do it when everybody is back. So Caleb, and he's back at the school and everything. It looks like he wants to bring everybody involved who can get involved. So at least it looks like we're taking a good step forward. Now, the third wish, though, is we find out Ted's wish was not to wish for peace, like originally stated, but it was to be free of the contract with Zed, only to find out the exact wording of Alaric's second wish, which was that the necromancer's third wish would be canceled out if it did not lead to Ted going for peace. So that means the necromancer is stuck as Zed's slave, just like Landon is, who's all for it, because he doesn't think of it as hell if he gets to help people move on and find peace. So that's a bit something there, a bit of a triple cross, I guess you can say, because you got Alaric originally going behind their backs to make the wish for the necromancer to return, and then you got the necromancer's double cross by punishing them differently. And then you got Alaric's triple cross by saying that, oh, the necromancer only had enough. Part of his wish was that the necromancer only had enough power to resurrect Alaric and Landon. Pooh. That's something, right? But anyways, the last scene of the episode is Hope on the outskirts of Mystic Falls, killing a stranger after giving a very convincing speech about feelings and emotions and humanity, only to say she didn't care. So begs question, was any of that real? But it looks like she's going back home to Mystic Falls. Beware, students, beware. Now, character-wise, though, we have Zed, which is the Ginny posing as the bartender under the clock tower, who actually has a deal with the ferryman. So anyone he grants wishes to bring them back to life, the ferryman would only go back to kill them and bring them back to Limbo. But because Zed wants souls collected, since he has to deliver souls to the ferryman to pay his own debt to find his own peace, everyone who grants a wish to, he gets their soul, and then they have to work for him to get more souls or more coins to help pay off his debt. And as Ted calls it, it's a pyramid scheme, if there ever was one in Limbo. So there's that. With Wade, though, we find out that he's still a student body president, takes his duties very seriously to the point where he was manning the phones at the school, which is how they were alerted to Alaric being out of his coma. We also find out when Landon visited Wade under the guise of being a dream, we learned that Wade has been dreaming a lot for Landon to return to the land of the living, and return to the school. We also find out that Wade actually used to have therapy sessions with Emma. And of course, since she's not at the school anymore, he hasn't had those in a while, but we knew that he had those at some point. And he thinks him seeing Landon, he doesn't know that Landon's back for good, but like seeing him in his dream and like in the state that he is, he thinks that's the verifications of him not going to therapy anymore. So there's that. We also find out Caleb, he's not shown on screen, but he is mentioned a few times. Apparently he's Alaric's emergency contact. Because I think when Wade was explained to Alaric was that the hospital tried to call Caleb, but when they couldn't get a hold of him, they then called the school to let them know that he had woken up from his coma, I believe. But yeah, so there's that. Tidbit-wise, though, interesting enough, there's no MG. We don't physically see Caleb. No Cleo, no Jed, no Finch, no Ethan, or Ben. The only students we see from the school are Wade and Pedro, with one scene where he opened the door to the school when it was knocked, and he had the Puckwoji following behind him as if like it was a dog, a pet dog. So Wade and Pedro were the only students seen at the school, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, I mean, after everything that was revealed and shown in this episode, from just the Limbo storyline and the What is Aurora No storyline, I think it would have been too much if we also had a separate storyline of what happened specifically, like separately at the school, which we know would have to be connected to the gods again because of like Ben being there. But anyways, that's it. So most shocking moment of the episode, I had kind of two of them. I guess the first one being the fact that the necromancer returned. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, I prefer Ted a lot better than the necromancer, but yeah. Or I guess the way he came back was a huge surprise. The second shocker was the fact that Lizzie wants to work with Aurora to find the gods. And yeah, that doesn't sound like a good plan for anybody, if I'm being honest. So there's that. But let's move on to favorite moments. First one, I think it has to be for me, would be Lizzie and Aurora. Just like, not only with Lizzie empathizing with Aurora about like not wanting to torture her, not wanting to kill her, of course, but then also just their moment at the diner, and was just something where it's like there was a true understanding between the two of them. And yeah, it's just like, I felt like it was really needed, and I'm glad that they had that moment and it wasn't just Aurora killing Lizzie the moment that she broke free. And there was an understanding there. I also just really like the part where Lizzie just went along with pretending to be Tristan. Yes, it was under the deception of finding more people or finding more information, but it was just very interesting to the lengths that she continued with it, and like how she responded, and it's like she was braiding Aurora's hair, and then like her sympathizing with realizing that like, oh, Tristan is the brother that she lost. And also, if we remember, Tristan died while Aurora was still in under the sleeping spell, right? Because Elijah died by the Hollow in season 5 of the originals, and Tristan died like maybe within the hour of Elijah dying. And in season 5, we saw Aurora in like episode 2 of her still being in the sleeping spell. So she, yeah, so like for Tristan, he's been he was at the bottom of the lake for 7 years, and then he like suddenly there like was no true goodbye between the two of them, and then she suddenly wakes up from the sleeping spell after so long, only to find out that her brother, her one family member that was beside her always, was gone and with no way back. So like, of course, that's gonna completely break her as well. But just to see that dynamic in her, just to see the dynamic from her perspective again, even though it was played out through Lizzie, it was kind of a reminder too, because last time we saw the two of them together was in season 3 of the originals. So yeah, they were annoying because they were enemies of the originals, but like they still had their own tragic past as well together. So it was just great to see that. And then of course I mentioned the apologies that Lizzie gave to Aurora, and that true understanding of the situations, because she even said that she apologized for not understanding where the pain was coming from, as opposed to just like, it's kind of like treating the symptoms without knowing what the cause of the symptoms were, kind of, right? Because then like if you don't know what the cause of the symptoms are and you just treat it, then you can very easily repeat the cause and get those symptoms again without even realizing it. So it was a great moment between them. Another favorite I did like was Hope's epiphany about emotions, right up to the point before she fed. It was for me in that moment, it was really compelling to see that struggle with Hope, to see if she's really like starting to feel fragments of emotion again, really questioning it. And then she says she was starting to feel gratitude, betrayal, regret, loss, a whole bunch of them. And I was like really wondering, like, was killing her what triggered it? Was Lizzie's words that were starting to take root, because she had told Hope that hate is still an emotion. Like, even though Hope claims that she has no humanity, and yet she has so much hate inside of her that is fueling her, and hate is still an emotion. So that means she's still feeling something. So that had me questioning whether or not, is this the start of Hope feeling something? Was having her neck snapped by Lizzie the start of resetting her humanity? So I really like the performance there. But then to have her feed on the stranger and then walk away saying like, I don't care, now has me questioning, like, was that all real? Was that all just for show for the stranger that stopped her on the side of the road? Or like, did she just kind of like put a pin on it for now? And maybe she actually is starting to feel something coming through. I don't know. I just really like the performance that Danielle gave about that, because it really does have you believing that maybe this is a turning point for her. So there's that. Another favorite I did have was just Landon and Wade and their quote unquote dream conversation together. It was just really great to see Wade just missing his best friend and having the chance to talk to him again, and then pretty much just being able to tell him everything, and like as Landon's request, and just full out unloading onto him with no restraint and no worry that he's gonna judge him. And I felt like that's what Wade needed and what he's been missing. And yes, Landon learned some very troubling truths from that, but I'm glad that that is who he went to talk to about what was going on, because he could have gone to MG. Yeah, he could have gone to MG. He could have gone. Well, he would have tried to find Josie. I would assume so. But yeah, I feel like with Raphael not there, he would have gone to Wade. Like, there would have been no one else he would have gone to before Wade. before Wade. So yeah, I really like them. I really can't wait for them to actually have a true reunion together. But yeah, I'm glad that also when Wade welcomed Alark back to the land of the living, that he told him like, oh, I know everything from Landon, and then Wade was kind of like thrown back by that. So I'm really glad that Wade, I'm assuming that Wade would get the conversation of like, yeah, Landon was back. You temporarily had your friend back for a day, and like, you know, that he listened and he took care of it. Care of you. We're gonna find a way to get him back, kind of a thing. So, yeah, there's that. Let's move on to peeved moments. This isn't more of a peeve, but it's more of just like a gruesome sight, and that was when Hope's enchanted bell dug into Aurora's chest the way that it did. That was like not like how Papa Tunde's knife goes in. It for this one was just like it literally kept carving and digging in, and I was just like, oh, that looked too real, which is a good thing, like visual effects wise, that they were able to achieve such realism. But at the same time, it's like that was too real. That was like gruesome. It's just like, oh, I feel bad for Aurora having to endure that. But that wasn't a peeve. That was more of like a gruesome, oh, kind of a thing. An actual peeve, though, was the fact that the necromancer returned. I mean, in the moment, it felt like that was a waste of a wish. And just having the necromancer back, when I'm like, we already got rid of him, and like now you have Ted on your side, and yet now you just erased all that by getting Ted to hate you and bringing the necromancer back, who is only out for himself. But it became less of a peeve when we actually got to hear the specific wording of Alark's wish, pretty much saying that the necromancer was only very limited to having this much power to do this specific action, and because he didn't do this as a follow-up, he's now screwed himself over, kind of a thing. So, like I said, a triple cross, but initially when it was shown that the necromancer was going to return, I was like, not again. So there's that. A very, very small peeve that I did have was that I was slightly disappointed that we weren't going to get a head dive into Aurora's mind, just because I wanted to see what that kind of looked like in there, but also just because I was hoping we'd get some archive footage about Aurora, about all the times you've seen Aurora's past with the Michelsons. I was kind of hoping that if Hope had to go into this head dive and then she saw flashes of her family in Aurora's mind, that maybe that might have triggered something in her. But yeah. But I guess it makes sense that because Aurora is so old in comparison to Hope, she would still have some resistance to a head dive, or maybe they'd only get the superficial thoughts, or maybe it's just very jumbled up from having to heal from being burned to death for something else. I don't know. So there's that. Let's move on to random questions, though, very quickly. In the final scene, I already kind of touched on this, but in the final scene with Hope and that stranger driver, was she truly starting to feel emotion again before she drank his blood, or was that all a facade that whole time to kind of reel him in and keep him there longer with her? I hope it was partly true, and then she just felt hungry, and then she kind of pushed those emotions down to feed on him, but I guess we'll have to wait and see about that. Okay, another question. If that divine sarcophagus is meant to protect the gods, why would Jen destroy hers? I mean, the sarcophagus seemed more like an encasement or an entrapment against the gods, so I don't get why it would be used to protect somebody. I mean, for me, it would seem like a protection if, like, maybe their whole environment around them is what is supposed to be their weakness, and then they're keeping them in there until like it was safe, kind of like with Supergirl and having the super suit that Lena made for Kara when the air was poisoned with kryptonite. It kind of seemed like that would be the reason why the sarcophagus would be needed for the gods, but I'm wondering, like, that seemed like, why would they need to be put in there? Also, side question, what could possibly be strong enough that the gods would need protection from them? Because I didn't think you can go bigger than a god, you know? And then also, another side question. Is it the demigods that need protection from, like, their godly parents or like that generation, or is it the original gods themselves that need protection? Right? So there's that. Another question that's kind of connected to that question, though, is that if Aurora named the creator of the sarcophagus to be Hephaestus / Vulcan, who by mythology was said to be a child of Zeus and Hera, or even Hera alone, he was considered as one of the Olympians. And I'm left wondering if Lizzie was referencing to Kronos when she wanted to find the god that could manipulate time and warp reality like she wants. Because if that's the case, mythology says that Kronos is one of the Titans, which is said to be on a higher hierarchy than the Olympians in regards to their power. But then again, Prometheus, who in the Legacies universe is supposed to be Ben, Prometheus in mythology is said to be a Titan as well, so like kind of on the same level as Kronos. But he's also said to be connected to Athena and Hephaestus, who is supposed to be Jen in the Legacies world. But Ben in this is supposed to be a demigod. So like I'm kind of wondering at what point with all these mythologies and these name drops, who is meant to be an actual god versus who is now turned into a demigod, or who's actually supposed to be a Titan, or whose hierarchies in mythology have changed for Legacy's purposes, or are they still keeping the same titles that they have in mythology? Because then the question would be, if the sarcophagus, I could see it if the sarcophagus are meant to protect the demigods from maybe their feuding godly parents. I could see that happening, because then Ben might be in one, or maybe that one belonged to Ben. I don't know. But then at the same time, it's like, but Jen, is she a demigod then? Or based off of like it, on that theory, based on if that coffin is hers or sarcophagus is hers and it's meant for demigods, then I could assume she's a demigod. But if she's the one that created those sarcophagi, that's supposed to be Hephaestus and Vulcan, who is not a demigod but an Olympian. So if the sarcophagi are meant for the Olympians, then what is more powerful than an Olympian that they would need protection from? I would assume it's a Titan, but that means Ben can't be a Titan in the Legacies world if he's, or Ben can't be the Titan Prometheus in the Legacies world, because he's technically Prometheus the demigod in this. I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm sorry, but that's like a question of like, it's one of those hard things where it's like the question of like, well, how much, this is also why I don't go researching too much into the source material before learning what the Legacies interpretation of the mythologies is going to be. Because it's also when I was researching, it's just like, all this is coming back to me when I had to study it in school. And it's just like, oh yeah, there's a lot of hierarchies and subsections and like who was with who or who represents what. And it was just, and who had like, you had your Greek equivalents and then you had your Roman equivalents. It was a whole thing. So I guess we'll have to wait and see when we go further into the whole gods and demigods mythology part of the TV universe. But let's move into predictions, because that was the last question. So predictions based off the promo for 413. It looks like we're going to go on a bit of a break as the episode doesn't come back until March 31st. So I think that's a 2-week break? Yeah, it's a 2-week break, which I feel like didn't we just get this back? So like, yeah. But anyways, the promo shows Hope returning to the Salvatore school and telling them the gods are coming, or that they're going to need her if they want to live against their attack. We also see Lizzie traveling with Aurora, and we see snippets of Ben and also Jen being in the episode. So that's something there. But the synopsis for 413 reads, with the headline, "The True Curse We Carry." And it reads, Lizzie continues on her quest with mixed results. Ben reveals more about his family and its history, and Jed finds his feelings deepening. Cleo is concerned about her recent changes. Meanwhile, the Salvatore School students come together to celebrate one of their own. Hope, Alaric, Landon, MG, and Caleb are also set to appear. Okay, so Lizzie continues on her quest with mixed results. This is going to be about her and Aurora and what they do. Ben's whole spiel, I hope we get a lot more backstory about the mythology. Hope we hopefully we get some flashbacks to kind of tag onto that. Cleo's concerned about her recent changes, definitely has to deal with her feeling pain whenever she tries to use magic after what Aurora did to her in her inner mindscape. And the students celebrating the return of one of their own, that has to be Alara coming back. That has to be the case, because I don't think they would be welcoming to No Humanity Hope coming back, you know. So there's that. Otherwise, that is pretty much it, guys. What do you guys think of this episode? What do you guys like about it? What do you think will happen next? Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your own thoughts, theories, opinions about all that good stuff. Also, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and check out my other videos if you haven't done so already. If you want, check out my Tumblr page. The link for that is down below. Read blog, promos, web clips, quotes, gifs, synopses, news, all that good stuff. All found in one place. Go check that out. I am behind for season 4, only because the tagging linking system I had set up on WordPress with the link down below kind of got messed up with some URL changes that happened in my absence, so I gotta go back and reconnect everything at some point. But if you still want to follow me there, go check that out. Otherwise, yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your patience. I hope you come back in 2 weeks or at the end of the month when 413 airs on March 31st and see what I have to say about the episode. As of right now, it's still saying we're going to get only 17 episodes for the season. Maybe by the time the new episodes come back, we'll find out a little bit more whether or not that's all we're going to get this season, or maybe we're going to push it to 20. Who knows? But until then, this is Mel. Wish you a great day.